First, the death toll from Monday's earthquakes in Turkey and Syria has risen past 11,000. The quake is now the deadliest in the past decade. The death toll is, however, expected to rise exponentially as freezing winter temperatures hamper the search. Rescue workers are racing against the clock to bring survivors out alive. France 24's Nadia Massih standing by in Gaziantep. We can go across to her now. Nadia, good afternoon to you. Tell us exactly what you've seen so far.
Delano, I'm in the province of Gaziantep, and let me tell you first of all about what's happening around me. In the cities, it does seem so far that there is an effort to try and get aid to people who are most in need, to pull people out of the rubble as well, that mostly being from what we've seen, the Turkish army. But here in the rural areas, very little of that at all. Any food that is being distributed is just by the survivors, the locals here, going around giving out coffee and bread to each other. There is very little here in terms of support from the Turkish government, in terms of international support as well. People here telling us their houses were destroyed during their first and the second quakes earlier on this week, and they're now staying, many of them, in vans that you may be able to see behind me. People keeping those vans on overnight, running the power to try and keep themselves warm in these desperately cold conditions here in the south of Turkey, because at night it's dropping to -10, -12 degrees Celsius. So really difficult conditions indeed for the civilians here. But of course, there is a sense for many of them that they feel as well lucky to be alive. As you said, that death toll has risen to above 11,000 and is likely to rise still further as those rescue operations continue and turn at some point in the coming days to recovery of bodies.
Nadia, we can tell it's very cold behind you, and you said where you are specifically, you haven't seen that international aid trickle in. Are you hearing about anything over on the Syrian side?
From what we're hearing, Delano, on the Syrian side of the border, my understanding is it's even worse than it is here. I'm talking about northwest Syria, parts of the country that are not controlled by the Syrian government, but by a complex web of rebel groups. In those areas, our understanding is, from talking to activists on the ground, aid has not arrived yet. People are waiting, and there is immense frustration, frankly, anger, that the Syrian government has said all international aid to Syria needs to come through the Syrian government. But it is very unlikely, those activists say, that they will be willing to distribute that aid to the northwest of the country, where to rebel groups that have fought them for over a decade of civil war. So there the humanitarian situation is extremely serious indeed. I was speaking when we arrived in Turkey to a doctor in Bab al-Hal hospital. That's on the other side of the border. It's the only border that is open in theory for humanitarian aid between Turkey and Syria. He told me, look, the situation here, to use his word, is catastrophic. He said that they didn't have enough blood for people who needed transfusions, that they were desperately in need, children as well as adults. And he said for him as a doctor, in terms of what he was seeing medically, it was comparable to the height of the Syrian civil war, when the Syrian government and Russia as well was using aeroplanes and barrel bombs to bomb those areas very regularly.
Nadia, we have seen images of people being brought out alive, families being reunited with their loved ones. But how much longer can that last, given, as you said, temperatures are dipping to below -10 Celsius at night?
Well, that is, of course, the question now for those families desperately waiting to see whether or not their family members, their loved ones, can be pulled out alive. How much longer can that realistically go on for? Obviously, I don't have those exact figures for you. What I can tell you, though, is from what we have witnessed near the epicenter of the quake in Kahramanmaraş, is that the Turkish army rescue operators were working long past nightfall, well into the night. We heard ambulance sirens wailing 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. That's suggesting people had been pulled out and were being rushed to hospital very late at night indeed. As to how long that can go on for, it's not for me to say, but clearly it's a really anxious wait for families, and the longer that goes on, the longer the clock ticks, the worse that fear will get that this will turn at some point to a recovery of bodies as opposed to pulling people out alive.
One can keep our fingers crossed that the rescue workers can do their jobs. Nadia, thank you very much for that. Nadia Massih reporting there for us from Gaziantep.